Continuing our medical theme for you today by talking about our young people and their health and well-being when they take part in sports. And I can't think of a better expert from the Medical College of Georgia at Augusta University than Dr. Beau Gedrick. Dr. Gedrick's specialty is sports medicine. He's also an assistant professor at MCG. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Let's first of all talk about the need for screening for sports, physicals, that is to say. Who needs to be screened or to have that all-inclusive physical before a sport, and why? Is it every kid, I would guess?
Yeah, pretty much everyone that's going to start playing in those higher level sports, especially as they start to get to the adolescent ages, 12, 13, it's definitely recommended that they see their physician to have a comprehensive physical history and physical exam performed.
What are you looking for? How extensive is this?
Really, it's kind of looking at everything. You want to know family history, you want to know past medical problems. You're really trying to, it's preventative for the health and safety of the athlete. You're trying to predict anything that might come up and address anything that maybe has happened in the past to make sure they're in the best possible position to go forward and stay injury-free.
You know, I mentioned at the top of the broadcast about cardiac incidents that happen, and unfortunately, I think at last check there were about 100 deaths due to cardiac issues. Are those even detectable in a regular physical? And if not, what can you do to make sure that your child's heart health is at its peak?
Well, it can definitely be difficult. Any death with a young person playing athletics is not, not well looked upon, and one is too many. If you look nationwide, basically, there's anywhere between 30 and 40 million student athletes. So when you have 100 incidences or thereabouts, that's less than 1/10 of 1%. So in the overall, it's exceedingly rare that that happens. But one of the things you look for in the history and physical exam are those risk factors that might put someone at risk for that. Even with that, it can still be extremely difficult to predict.
When might those risk factors rise to red flag level, if you will, rise to the point where you say, Mom and Dad, maybe it's best if they don't play?
Yeah. So anytime if they're having, either during exercise or activity or within the hour afterwards, if they're having any kind of chest pain, dizziness, passing out, feeling more tired than you would necessarily expect for their teammates, those are all things that need to be discussed with their doctor.
What can we do as parents, coaches, caregivers to make sure that our students are prepared for the long haul, our student athletes, when it comes to sports? Is it just conditioning? Is it equipment? Talk about that, if you will.
The biggest thing is actually just awareness. So this is a good way to start that, basically, is, a lot of times people are taught, play through it, things will get better. But if you're having those symptoms like we talked about before, that's something serious that needs to be addressed. And both coaches and parents need to understand that that's something that needs to be looked into. And there's lots of ways to do that. None of them are perfect, but it all starts with that history and physical exam before they start playing sports.
What are you seeing out there when it comes to sports-related injuries? Is it what we might think it is, broken bones, strains, that kind of thing? Or do you see anything worse than that these days in all sports?
Well, your biggest thing that you see across the board is obviously bruises, sprains, strains, that sort of thing, followed by broken bones and that sort of stuff. The big thing now, obviously, that everyone's aware of is concussions.
Right.
The research is not completely there, but we're getting better at it. We understand a lot more about it than we did even when I was in high school necessarily, and everyone's becoming more aware of it.
Your thoughts on how prepared our coaches are today to spot some of the things that you've mentioned and to make sure that they're being as safe and proactive as possible? How are our coaches doing?
I'll say overall, in the grand scheme of things, coaches actually do pretty well. A lot of them are former players, so they understand a lot of the ins and outs of it. Especially, now a lot of schools have athletic trainers that work with them as well, so that's another avenue that the student athletes can go to if they're having concerns or if the coach is not up to date on things or unaware of certain things. I think as time goes on, I think everything's in a little bit better place than it was previously, but there's always work to do.
Well, football season is upon us, and the excitement is at a fever pitch right now. Yet I heard on the radio the other day that football was dying, and that this is the beginning of the end because most parents don't want their kids to play. What are your thoughts on that, and what would you say to a parent who's on the fence because they have safety concerns about their potential football player?
Well, if they have a concern pretty much about anything, let alone just playing football, then that's a real concern. Going forward, we're in a place, a little bit of unknown information going forward. We have some information there, with concussions and, as they go on age, the CT, the chronic traumatic encephalopathy. But a lot of it boils down to, and this goes back to coaching as well, is good technique, parenting. No injury is avoidable, especially if you're going to play sports.
Right.
But once again, it's down to the parent and the athlete to make that decision as to what's best for them.
I may be calling this the wrong thing, but is the Heads Up initiative working, where a student athlete is taught not to lead with their head in the game of football? Is that taking across the country, and are athletes being more careful out there?
We don't have the data on that yet to say if it's absolutely working or not.
Yeah, it's pretty new.
Yeah, it's pretty new on the overall, so that is yet to be determined. But anytime you can avoid or lessen any kind of blow to the head, that's considered to be a positive step right now. And that all comes with technique.
Let me ask you this: as parents prepare to have their children go to the doctor and have their physicals for sports, football and otherwise, are there any things that we can look out for that might make us think that the physical is not taking long enough, that it is not as extensive as we need it to be? You've mentioned a lot of problems that can be spotted. How do we know when maybe they're just rushing the kid through?
That's a good question, actually. So the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association have actually come out with kind of a 14-point sort of screening that can either be brought in with the student athlete if they're feeling that way, or can be addressed as well. So you can actually access that stuff online through those organizations, and you can print it out ahead of time and make sure that's addressed if that's a concern. Any
concerns that we need to be aware of in this insane heat when it comes to dehydration? What can we all be doing to make sure that that's not an issue?
Yeah, this is my first Georgia summer, so
yeah,
I'm learning what that is like. Biggest thing is hydration, obviously, and that's mainly with water. Mm-hmm. You can replace it with some of the other electrolyte drinks as well, but it's hydrating before, during, and after, and really avoiding the peak times of heat during the day.
Well, the one thing that is standing out during our quick talk together is that we're all in this together. It's not just the doctor's job to make sure the child is A-OK. We all have to be their advocates.
Absolutely, and that's the biggest thing. If we're still parents at heart. I'm a parent myself, and I have concerns too.
Yeah.
So those are all decisions we have to make as we go forward.
Well, I appreciate what you do, and welcome to this heat. Welcome to Augusta. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. We love it here. So.
Absolutely. Dr. Beau Gedrick and his team at the Medical College of Georgia working to keep our kids safe out there and to keep all athletes safer when they play.